Owning a Tesla will never get in the way of your safety during a severe storm like a hurricane, as long as you start with the same kinds of preparations you'd be doing if your vehicle ran on gas or diesel instead of electricity. Number 1, evacuate if you're told to do so. Number 2, evacuate if being without power for days will be an issue for your safety. Number 3, if you decide to ride out the storm, be prepared to stay at home for several days without power so that recovery crews can clear the roads, repair the power grid, and respond to emergencies without you getting in the way or becoming an emergency yourself. These 3 rules should dictate how you prepare your Tesla for a storm, because otherwise it's meaningless. If you aren't prepared for a storm, who cares if your Tesla is? On that note, I'd like to take this time to remind people to check on those in your neighborhood who might not be able to prepare for a storm themselves, like the elderly or those who don't have our financial resources. Don't count on others stepping in to help those people. Before you consider your storm prep done, please see if there's anything you can do to help those who can't help themselves. There are countless websites and videos that can help you prepare for the kinds of storms you see in your area, so I'm not going to go over that again here. But I do want to share some strategies to help you fit your Tesla into the things you already should be doing to keep you and your family safe. Obviously, you're limited to the range your Tesla's battery can provide you until you can reach a charging station. Unlike a gas or diesel vehicle, you can't stock up on gas cans for extra fuel, but that doesn't have to be the risk of getting stranded that might sound like. You want to maximize your range by having your battery fully charged before you evacuate or the storm hits. If you're evacuating, you should charge to 100% before you leave. You're not going to wreck your car's battery charging to 100% before hitting the road, and an absolute full charge gives you the most options for finding additional charging on your trip. If you're riding it out, you don't really want to charge to 100% because after about 8 hours staying full, the battery starts to undergo some chemistry changes that reduce what you're going to get as far as life from the battery long term. That's why you should charge to 90%, even charging to 95%, which is really hard to get to, is going to take some pressure off of the battery if it's going to be sitting there with a charge. But here in North Carolina, I can easily get out of the path of our biggest storms with just a few hundred miles of range. I still charge to 90% before a storm with no worries. Know that Sentry mode can drain miles of range off of your battery every day, especially in a storm that might trigger your Tesla's ultrasonic sensors. However, you might still want it active if you're worried about looters and others taking advantage of slow emergency response by breaking into cars. Just something to keep in mind when thinking about how to use the range you start with when you've lost power. Cabin overheat protection can also rob you of range just sitting there. However, if this is something you rely upon and you turn this off, set some sort of reminder in your calendar to turn it back on. Whether you choose to evacuate or ride it out, you have to plan how you're eventually going to add range. Current info on superchargers is easy to find. You just hit this lightning bolt icon right here and all the superchargers will show up on your navigation map. You can scroll around to see where they are and also to see if they're up and running in the first place. If they're not, you'll see an icon that looks like a do not enter symbol. And you might see a lot of them out if you wait until after a storm hits to evacuate. They might also not show up on the map at all, which could mean they're out of service, but it could mean they just don't have communication with the network, but they're otherwise working. There is no way to know which it is using this map, however. This photo shows the supercharger network status after Hurricane Irma hit Florida, which is probably also a good proxy for the availability of non-Tesla charging stations, because if Tesla doesn't have power, it's likely that nobody else had power either. On that note, the absolute best resource for keeping track of the current status of all charging stations, including superchargers, is PlugShare. You don't need to create an account to use it, but you should because it allows you to be a giver and not just a taker. You can set up the map to display only the chargers that your car can use, which will declutter the map a little and save you some time clicking on charging stations that won't do you any good. Note that the info is only as recent as the last check-in. This is where you can give to the system and not just take from it. Anytime you're near a charging station during during a storm, report what you see. PlugShare has an option for checking in to say that a station is down, and you can also check in just to say that you see other vehicles successfully charging. It doesn't have to be your car. Again, the info at PlugShare is only as recent as the last check-in, and you can help a whole lot of people by updating the info as often as you can during extended power outages. If you evacuate, PlugShare will also help you find places to charge at your destination, or even find a sensible destination to head for in the first place. If I'm evacuating in my Model 3, I'm going to be heading somewhere with a lot of charging options. Yes, you can sometimes find hotels with charging stations, but they'll probably be slammed by other EV owners doing the exact same thing you're doing. I'm more interested in staying in a town that has a lot of charging stations than at a hotel with a single charging station for guests. To date, Tesla has always provided free supercharging for anyone in or near evacuation zones for all kinds of natural disasters, not just hurricanes. That's not an opportunity to get some free juice. If you don't need the charge, please leave the superchargers for those that do. Just like lines will form at gas stations as people evacuate before a storm, lines will form at superchargers. For the few Teslas that have their battery locked at a lower maximum charge than it's capable of, Tesla also temporarily unlocks the full capacity of the battery. This is mainly for older Model S and X's and for standard range Model 3, so if your Tesla is one of these, don't be surprised if you wake up in the days leading up to a storm and find an extra 20 to 30 miles of range at your set charge. Or conversely, if you see your percentage charge suddenly drop. That's because your current stated charge is suddenly a lower percentage of what is temporarily available to you. Pretty cool of Tesla to do that for those that can benefit from it. If you decide to ride out a storm, power can be knocked out to charging stations just the same as it can be knocked out to gas stations. I know in some areas of the country, gas stations are required to have backup power, but that's not the case everywhere you might end up riding out a storm. And backup power doesn't matter if you can't get fuel trucks in to resupply the pumps. Let's get to the third rule that I mentioned at the start of this video. Be prepared to spend days without the ability to top off your Tesla. A generator might be part of your plan to stay at home without grid power like it is ours, but Tesla straight out says not to use portable generators like this one because it doesn't put out as clean a power as grid power. This can be problematic for sensitive electronics. There are definitely much more expensive generators than this one that are specifically designed to put out clean power for electronics and medical equipment, but if you prepare for an extended power outage like you shouldn't need to make that choice. That said, power at charging stations is generally back online before fuel trucks start to resupply gas stations anyway. So you might very well be able to add range to your Tesla before your neighbors can add range to their gas or diesel vehicles. In fact, you might easily be topping off your Tesla from grid power while your neighbors are scrambling to find gas before the storm even hits. Gas stations don't have enough fuel to fill every tank. Even when there's plenty of fuel in area depots, fuel trucks can't transport it fast enough to keep up with demand. This can cause a problem both for those who want to stay and those who want to leave. Meanwhile, as long as there's grid power, there's plenty of electricity for you to get your Tesla to maximum range. Speaking of maximum range, just as with gas and diesel vehicles, Teslas have their best range with properly inflated tires. Check the label inside the driver's door for the recommended pressure and make sure all 4 tires match it. If you have a Model 3 with 18-inch factory wheels and you're like me, you probably got rid of your aero covers as soon as you could get your hands on the wheel cap kit. Be sure to pop those aero covers back on because they can give you an additional 10 to 15 miles of range on a full charge, depending on your battery size and your driving speed. I use a suction cup made for removing screens from phones and tablets to pull out the center caps, though you can certainly pry them out with a small screwdriver if you're careful. Even the best charging plan can get goobered by traffic, so you're going to want to add range to your Tesla any opportunity you have. But one of the nice things about Teslas is that they don't use as much power just sitting there as an idling gas or diesel engine. But you might find yourself in a situation where you really do want to get every bit of your available range out of your battery. And so you might want to roll down your windows and turn off your HVAC. You might want to turn off your radio. You might put it in park if you're going to be sitting there for a while. But those are what I would consider to be extreme measures to take to get the absolute last mile out of your battery. The speed you're driving, however, makes a huge difference on range. You can get a lot more range out of your battery by slowing down if it's safe to do so. In fact, it's really hard to get the indicated range if you're driving faster than 60 miles per hour. Drag is a square of your speed, but instead of doing the math, I'm just going to show you the actual power consumption of my Model 3 at different speeds. I drove the exact same 4.2 mile stretch of highway at 60 miles per hour and at 70 miles per hour. This isn't meant to be perfectly scientific, but I burned around 222 watt hours per mile at 60 miles per hour and 267 watt hours per mile at 70 miles per hour. That translates to 4.5 miles of driving for every kilowatt hour consumed versus only 3.75 miles of driving for every kilowatt hour consumed. In other words, for this particular stretch of highway, my range at 60 miles per hour is 20% more than my range at 70 miles per hour. That's worth about 60 more miles with my long-range all-wheel drive Model 3. You want to maximize the range you get out of your battery? Keep your highway speeds as low as the traffic conditions safely allow. It really should go without saying that in times of natural disaster, you shouldn't go anywhere without your mobile connector. You never know when you might need to plug into a standard outlet to charge. Tesla includes a 120 volt adapter like this one for standard outlets, but that's only going to add about 3 to 5 miles of range for every hour you charge. That's why I recommend you get one of these. It's the NEMA 1450, and luckily they included it back when I bought my Model 3, but they don't anymore. However, it turns every campground with RV hookups into a potential charging station for you that will let you add up to 30 miles of range for every hour that you charge. If you find yourself needing to do that, it's smart to call ahead to A, make sure the campground has power, and B, make sure they have a spot open for you to charge. Even if they're fully booked, be courteous on the phone and they might try to work you around whatever they have regardless. Campground people are some of the most community-oriented people you'll find, and if they know you're someone in need, they'll probably do what they can to help you. If they don't ask you to pay to charge, offer anyway. How you treat those helping you to charge when you need it will impact how they treat those coming behind you. Owning a Tesla is not the death sentence during a natural disaster your friends might be teasing you about. The greater risk is in not doing the other preparations you should be doing before a big storm like a hurricane. If you evacuate when you should, you'll be fine evacuating with a Tesla. If instead you prepare to stay at home for days without power, you'll be fine staying at home for days without power with your Tesla. It really is a binary choice when you come to it. You do either one or the other, and if you don't, any of the problems that you face were entirely preventable. However, using the strategies I give in this video will reduce how much your Tesla impacts you, whatever you choose to do. If you're looking to get the range of a Tesla for yourself, Tesla has a very cool referral program that will get you free supercharging. I've got the details linked in the video description as well as in the comments below. I really appreciate you watching The Tech of Tech, and I hope to see you next time.